This is our first episode, and we have a very special guest with us. Jake Klinvex serves as the Director of Blockchain and Digital Assets at Mastercard. In this episode, we will talk about how trust will lead us to mass adoption, Thanksgiving crypto conversations, and the value of nonprofits building in Web3 today. Welcome to Give Different. I'm so happy that you are the first guest.
My first.
And honestly, I couldn't think of a better first guest. Let's just start super simple. I mean, like, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah. So, Jake Klinvex, and traditionally started out as an entrepreneur at a young age. Was fortunate to start a couple companies and have some exits. This last one, about, I don't know, 6 or 8 years ago now, we exited we were a small 20-person company in Pittsburgh. We had an exit to a little bit bigger 200-person company in Boston. That company was then acquired by Mastercard in 2019. So we kind of went full circle from, really small company to more growth equity stage, and then now being at a big organization. So traditionally entrepreneurial background, and now at a big company, and then was traditionally in the loyalty space, and then I joined Mastercard's crypto team 4 to 6 months ago, I think in May. Based here in Pittsburgh, PA, 5 young children, married. So it's a bit crazy right now. So with both the family and then everything in the space too, but it's all super exciting. And then part of the reformers community as well with you. So all good things.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's actually how we first met, I believe. You bought a reformer and it came into the town hall, our gated area, and then we connected right there. So that's neat. It's interesting to hear of, like, you very entrepreneurial. You've started companies, they've been acquired, and then that company gets acquired by Mastercard. Did you ever think you would be working at Mastercard?
No, and the funny thing is that, like, being in the space that we were in with loyalty, Mastercard being I thought they were a credit card company, and even after we were acquired, and we do issue, or banks issue cards for us, but when we were acquired, people would joke, "Can you get me a better interest rate on my credit card or thing?" And so it's just been interesting. Like, we just didn't think of it as a company that would acquire people in the consumer engagement and loyalty space. But getting here, I think we've really learned that it's really a tech company, and all Mastercard really is it's connecting consumers with merchants. It's connecting their banks together. I mean, there's, I think, 93 million merchants that accept Mastercard. Wow. There's billions of consumers. So it's a really good user experience. There's a lot that goes into the fraud protections. So it's been really interesting to dive into everything that the company does. And even though it's a really large financial services player, it's a super innovative company in the, like, cyber and intelligence, of course, the crypto space. So we feel really, really fortunate that we ended up here. But no, I didn't. I never really planned on working here. But really happy that I am.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you said 4 to 6 months ago you joined the crypto team at Mastercard. What are you doing there? How did you get into crypto?
Yeah, so I guess starting with how I got into it, and then I can get into what we're working on here. But I think, I had friends that were in the space, probably in maybe like 2019, 2020. And it was just kind of a buzzy space that you wanted to learn more about. And I think he sent me a couple links like, hey, check out this company, check out what these guys are doing. And I think the first use case that really hooked me was decentralized storage. So looking at companies like
Yeah.
Arweave, for example, and looking at the economic models that like these new economic models um, to really spread out this information. So, I mean, their big story was around the Library of Alexandria burning down and losing all this human knowledge. And this was kind of a new mission to collect the world's data and preserve it. So I think that's what got me hooked. And it was a kind of a simpler use case to understand, made a ton of sense. And then just started diving deeper, watching YouTube videos, having 5 kids, and being in the middle of COVID. I think the thought at the time was that, hey, that learning there was a crypto team at this company. Mastercard's an innovative company. It was kind of a best of both worlds, where it's a really solid place to be. Obviously, having that brand behind you, you can go to all these conferences, and even these small companies want to talk to you because you're Mastercard. So I think the thought getting into the space within Mastercard was just that this is a really cool opportunity to learn without risking without my wife getting really upset with me and dropping everything and jumping right back into a startup. And I think so far I've been really, really happy that I made that move.
Yeah, that's really cool. And it's actually totally new to me to even to think of Mastercard as like a tech company, not just a credit card company, because
Yeah.
that's how most people know of Mastercard.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I think it really, I mean, if you think, yeah, I mean, yeah, because people think that Mastercard's moving money and is a bank, but really it's just the connection between the your issuing bank and the merchant's bank, and it's just a great user experience, and it works. And there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. But then if you think about it from because I mean I asked similar things even joining on here with the team. I'm like, isn't crypto trying to like take
Right.
over
Yeah.
essentially
Yeah.
what we so like where does it fit? But I think if you think about what we do now um, in traditional finance, and then with crypto, we're essentially checking to make sure that you have the funds in your account, and we tell the merchant that yes, you do, and you should do this transaction. So I mean, whether you have those funds in the bank or within a crypto exchange, like we're that network that ties it all together. I mean, we've had some recent announcements just around, their crypto cards where you can now spend your crypto anywhere that Mastercard's accepted, as well as there were recent announcements around us enabling traditional financial institutions to custody assets or offer buy, sell, hold for their consumers. So I think we're positioned pretty well in this space, and yeah, but it is surprising just because it seems like it's at odds with what you would traditionally think of as a big financial institution like us.
What is the next step for Mastercard in this space? Is it to actually uh, like create a different like a Mastercard blockchain? Because that when you say network, I just think of a blockchain itself. Or are they happy using kind of any chain that is around?
Yeah, I think um, it's a good question. I would say that being I mean, Mastercard's big thing is trust. So it's like when that logo's on the card, you as a consumer, you're like, this is going to work when when I swipe it, and from the merchant's point of view, that this person's going to be good for those funds. So I think you'll see. There's probably things that I can't speak to today. I will say you'll see a lot more. Like these first two use cases that I mentioned are pretty relatively basic, and I'd say the more advanced engineering is coming. But I think to try to answer your question with where things are going, I don't think Mastercard will be like a first mover as far as picking a particular technology, just because that's just not the ethos. We wouldn't want to pick not that FTX is a blockchain, but like you can't bet on those horses as until they're really solid, or else people lose trust in the network. So I would say that I think Mastercard it'll build technology to make the technologies that win in the space better. So whether that's there are just so many consumer protections that are built into current payment methods that like I didn't even think about, but just like being able to, if someone steals your credit card, like they're like the fraud protections and the chargeback protections if you don't get your goods. So I think you'll see, as these new technologies come out, how can we build that trust in those technologies and have those value adds on top of it? But it's probably not that there are a lot of things that I would be able to speak to in probably 2023 that I can't talk about now.
No, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
But I mean, even what you've alluded to is super interesting, and this idea of trust is, I mean, it can quickly erode, as we've seen, recently with FTX. Yeah. So how? I guess let's talk about FTX and current like market sentiment. But before we do that, how does Mastercard or like a direct competitor, Visa, how do you evaluate exchanges like FTX?
We can evaluate the legitimacy of these companies in some ways through. I mean, there's a public acquisition called CipherTrace, which is it's a technology that can look at different inflows and outflows and wallet addresses to make sure that is there illicit behavior associated with particular exchanges.
That's interesting.
So I think so, but I mean, obviously, like I think the FTX example kind of took everyone a bit by surprise. So I don't know. I mean, I think Mastercard's pretty focused on how can we make it easier for people to interact with these exchanges, but we're not necessarily, doing any type of public scoring or commenting on like what is, what is safe and what is not. It's more about giving consumers choice in payments. So if they want to go to Coinbase or Gemini, my wife, for example, like she's probably not going to open a wallet to do so. She's more likely to use her credit card to buy crypto. So I think same thing with like purchasing NFTs. So I think we're pretty focused on how do we make it easier and safe for these next billion consumers, rather than saying something like this is a Mastercard approved exchange or something along those lines. Though I think that being able to spend at we don't enable every exchange to accept credit cards, so it's really only those top ones at the moment.
Yeah, and what you get to really is the trust factor that's required. And I think a lot of the outsiders, and you look at the media lately especially, there's a lot of negative sentiment with the space and the loss of trust in institutions and individuals, and then you see all these connections with like government agencies and the regulators and these and FTX or other institutions. So I mean, consumers ultimately, it needs to be super simple. It needs to be like, hey, we can trust when we buy this, we're going to get this, and it's an actual asset rather than it, just being a vaporware.
Spending customer deposits
or right
hedge funds.
I think, right. I think that's probably fair with all new technologies. I mean, I lived through the dot-com era, but I was a little too young to actually know what was going on. I heard of the bubble bursting then. But I'm
Yep.
sure there's, just in reading, there's obviously lots of parallels whenever new technologies, come forward.
Yeah, and I think you probably had similar things. Like I was not looking forward to discussing crypto over Thanksgiving with,
Right.
I had like some preemptive texts from like my brother and brother-in-laws who aren't huge believers. But I think yeah, I don't know. And I've talked to this about it like with a couple people, and it seemed like that like the situations that have blown up recently seemed like just pure greed, which could happen in any industry. And trying to explain these nuances to like people were trying to get into crypto. It wasn't super successful, but it was still explaining like no, like if all of this activity was on chain and if it like this wasn't I would be more worried if like Ethereum was hacked or a particular protocol
Right.
failed. But I mean, this was just a case of a bad actor. And yeah, I mean, it was interesting. Even, and I think to your point around regulation too, like it was interesting to see some of the exchanges come together and say like, hey, we're going to do proof of reserves now. We're going to try to
Yep.
figure out how to do and like so that I think that's going to happen much faster than any regulation. And it is cool as an industry to just see that people seem to really care about building that trust. And I think we'll figure out a way to do it.
When we think of and trust and the level of trust that's required in order for like mass adoption to happen, is like right now we have a major like accessibility issue, and it sounds like Mastercard is like working to solve that, for mass adoption.
Mm-hmm.
When we think of like nonprofits or NGOs, like people that like organizations that tend to be more conservative fiscally, how how should they entertain the space? Is there value in them entertaining the space? Have you seen any examples in your work of nonprofits benefiting from crypto?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think I was thinking about this before we were gonna chat, and I was like, man, I wish I had like a killer use case for a particular a particular example. And I think there are. I mean, we've talked about like the NFT examples. We saw the many hands, the success around that and raising money. But I think ultimately, I think when NGOs and nonprofits are thinking about this space, like the thing that I've seen more than anything is that um, like the people that are getting into this space, they want to like. I think it's typically like pretty smart people and people who want to build and make a difference. And like one of the examples I was thinking about is like at Mastercard, there's like our teams chat, and there are all these different groups. And there's one that's I think it's called Web3 Movers and Shakers, and it's I don't know 70, 100 people throughout the company, and I don't know 3 or 4 times a day, even before the like during the FTX thing, people were saying like all these updates. But even prior to that, there's all like hey, check out this new technology, check out this article that's in this space that's coming. And I was thinking about it, I'm like, I don't remember being part of a company where like just the industry itself, like there's so many people just passionate about like knowing what's next and what's being built. So that's all to say, I think if nonprofits can capture like that enthusiasm for and like with what even with what you're doing like there are a lot of people out there that are really smart, really motivated, really want to solve problems that I think would jump on like if there's a good web3 vision for a nonprofit or a good problem that they're solving, like people that maybe typically wouldn't have done that in the past would now
Mm,
jump aboard. And
yeah.
I think we've probably talked about it in the past too, but one of like my passions is figuring out like how how do you get the most talented people in the world to solve these really hard, like these really hard, like just like a simple example, like drilling wells in Africa is like
Mm,
a really good thing to do. And how do you get, like, even thinking of like what's gone on at Twitter where they've laid off like 75% of the staff that may not have had to be there. And it's like there's
right.
all this brain power. They're probably not doing that much. Like, how do you get them to work on these other problems? And I really think that the Web3 economic model, I don't have the exact way of how that's all going to work out or how you incentivize the people, but there's probably
Yeah.
something there. And I was even looking at I think there was a tweet thread today by Bill Ackman, who, I mean, he's not like a huge Web3 guy, he's like a big billionaire in traditional finance, but he was speaking to the benefits of Web3. And he's just like, you in Web3, you can get unaffiliated people, meaning
Mm,
people that don't
yeah.
work for your nonprofit, to go and do do stuff for you, like with this token model. And there aren't all the complexities, aren't all the disclosures. So I think there's a way to harness all these people. And if you have a really good problem that you're trying to solve, get them to do things for you and incentivize them to do it in a way that it just wasn't there in Web 2. And it's something that's I've been thinking about for a long time, even before getting into Web 3. I'm like, man, I wish I could get this guy at Facebook or Amazon to like work on this problem with me. But it's
Mm,
just, we have families, we have kids. Like,
right.
how do you get people to do that? So I think there's some type of I don't know the exact way to do it, but I think if these nonprofits start to figure it out, you'll start to see the smartest people in the world work on the hardest problems and most fulfilling problems instead of being a mid-level person at a like one of the
Right.
FANG companies. So that
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And it's interesting, like this is now a reality. And I think this technology has been around, for years. But
mhm.
COVID forced us all to stay at home, to go online, and
Yeah.
everyone was like immediately lonely. Like they're like, I can't go
Right.
outside, right? And so
Right.
like they had to go look for community online. And
Yeah.
then you had
Yeah,
like
you're right.
this is kind of when the NFT communities started forming, and they started forming communities around like a set of values. And it's interesting, like what you said, like Web3. I think, especially right now, is full of a lot of really smart builders, people that are like wanting. They see the potential of the technology.
Yeah.
Market goes up, market goes down, whatever. Like they don't care about
Hmm.
that, honestly.
Yeah.
They just care like what's this underlying technology and what like how can this be harnessed. And
Yeah.
it's this idea of like it's ironic, like SBF, the founder of FTX, would always talk about altruism, and
Yeah.
like was the exact like uh like antithetical to what altruism is. And it's this
Right.
idea of like selflessness. And
Hmm.
I mean, what you're saying about essentially is like what DAOs solve. Like DAOs,
Yeah.
decentralized autonomous organizations, people can gather around a common vision, a common like set of goals, and through the blockchain and tokenizing things and NFTs, you can actually incentivize and reward like participation in the fulfilling of those goals.
Right.
I think
Yeah.
it's
You're actually going to do like, you have to participate. You have to
right.
do, like, it's not
You
just to put it on your resume or,
right.
yeah, like
Yeah,
it's
you're
actual
rewarded for the
dollars.
work you put in. Right.
Right. Yeah.
Which I mean, it's wild to think, but I mean, I think a bunch of companies in the future will be structured this way. It's like you are rewarded and paid for the work that you put in for whatever the company's about. It
Yeah.
makes sense, right?
Which isn't possible. Yeah. It's not possible today. Like, I think the companies that are going to make it in this space, they're going to figure out economics. Like everyone's just coming to the conclusion that this Web two economic model isn't healthy. Like you're the
Mm,
product. So like I think people are,
right.
I don't know, there's some things are going to change like as as this Web3 model is more accepted. So I'm here for the ride on it for sure.
Do you have a favorite like Mastercard product?
Deep, like I really have come to appreciate our like cyber and intelligence capabilities, and I think
Hmm.
it's just so key to the trust of the whole network as we've been talking about. So I think all of those products are pretty complex, and they're always trying to stay um, a step ahead and do a really good job. I mean, when you pay with a credit card, you feel like if someone steals your card, you're going
Yep.
to be covered.
Yeah,
So I
I've
think,
experienced it. I've had
yeah,
someone steal my card, and they went on a Home Depot shopping spree.
really,
Yeah.
they got some good
Like they
stuff.
they didn't steal my physical card, but they stole the digital. They somehow got the
Yeah,
number. I don't. And online they were just spending a bunch. I called, and it like no questions asked. New
yeah,
card issued, refunds. Like amazing. Yeah.
yeah. And I like in that ecosystem, like between the banks, between the card companies, like they've really figured it out as far as like who's covering it. I mean, I think that's what's going to have to happen in the crypto space too for everything to be
Yeah.
widely adopted is that there's going to have to be a lot of organizations working together to make it really smooth and safe for the consumers.
All right. Well, anything that you want to say to wrap us up? Any closing thoughts on the space?
Back to the Thanksgiving conversations of like people saying like, "Oh, crypto's dead. It's not." And I think the interesting thing was that I just told them like, "Look, I'm not a speculator. I'm not like buying like I have ETH and Bitcoin, like the blue chip stocks or blue chip coins, I would say." And then like I kind of think of like what I'm seeing at Mastercard, like we're still building the foundation of crypto. Like it's almost like the broadband of
Mm-hmm.
internet. Like oh, this is being built right now. So like we've been heads down in that. So all the leverage that was out there, the hedge funds in crypto, like to be honest, like I didn't even see it and don't even feel from the people that are building in the space that
Mm.
it's going like I think it'll affect mass adoption. It'll probably slow things down a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, but I think from the people that are building in the space, like they saw it more as like, oh, here's an opportunity to make proof of, proof of reserve. Like they're
Right.
solving problems to make it even better. Yeah, so I think my takeaway is just that it's not going away. I still think like the most talented and passionate people are getting into this space, and I think that yeah, so I think there's a ton of opportunity to your point around like nonprofits, NGOs investing in this space. It's probably a long term investment, but I think it I think they're going to find good people to work on these problems. And back to the broadband point, like that had to be built before
Mm.
the consumer applications on top of it could be used. And I still think with like the Ethereum and like these L2s being built and all these
Yeah.
security problems that are being solved, like once that's done, I think that's when like this some of these killer apps are going to be built and mass consumer adoption. So I think my big takeaway is even with FTX and SBF and all the craziness, Genesis and all of this, like I'm still, and I've seen it from everyone. Like I don't think anyone's mind has been changed, you know, any percentile that this is the way that things are going to go.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love it. It's that. Yeah. I mean, and we have seen like just nonprofits and crypto for that matter being used to like do significant fundraising in Ukraine and other
Yeah.
parts of the world for like needs that are urgent, and like what better way to actually send funds and not deal with the craziness of like wire transfer fees and bank exchange rates and all that, you know? Yeah, no, I'm with you. It's the same is true in my space with the builders I know in the space. Like they're unwavering. Like they're not worried about what the markets do, you know?
Yeah. They're almost
So I
more
love
excited.
yeah, exactly. Like these things unfortunately need to happen in order for like the next step to take place. And that next step might look like regulation to some degree. But again, like you said, like, you know, proof of reserves is happening. And I just read something on Twitter about like proof of liabilities. Like the big exchanges are getting ahead of it. And like they're always ahead of regulation in whatever sense, you know, you want to look at it. Like before regulation's called for, when the regulation comes out, everyone is already conformed to whatever that's going to look like, you know?
Right.
And we're starting to see that. So like, yeah, the trust maybe has been pushed back, you know, months, maybe years. But I think it's for the long haul, it's just going to get better and be exciting. So yeah, I appreciate you, Jake. Thanks for taking some time.
Yeah, no, thanks, Stephen. Well, I'm excited to listen to a lot of these podcasts and honored to be a part of it. And looking forward to learning from some of the other people that you have on for sure.